10x is the way you need to operate on planet Earth. If COVID didn't teach everybody, between COVID, I separate the events, COVID and then the government incompetence and overreach, between those two events that have happened in the last 18 months, like if that didn't show you that unexpected shit's gonna happen and set you back, then you're never gonna learn it. I'd say the hardest part about 10x is just the beginning, because when you're still stuck in two schools of thought, that's what grinds you down, right? Like a grind by definition is two things in close proximity, moving in opposite directions, causing friction. So when you start studying 10x, you start studying Grant Cardone. That's why a lot of people don't like Grant. They could say, oh, he has a jet, he brags, but that's not really what it is. They don't want to accept the level of responsibility that Grant's asking them to take. Like 10x is the way you need to operate on planet Earth. If COVID didn't teach everybody, between COVID, I separate the events, COVID and then the government incompetence and overreach, between those two events that have happened in the last 18 months, like if that didn't show you that unexpected shit's gonna happen and set you back, then you're never gonna learn it. But the hard part about 10x is like when you first start, you're still connected to all these bad ideas. And you're now crossing the road, but you're walking in the middle of the road, and that's when you get smashed by a truck. That's when you get hit by stuff, is when you're still entertaining two schools of thought. That's when you feel the most torn. That's when you feel the most tired, is when you're still hanging out with your broke friends. And there's nothing wrong with your friends being broke, but it's the ones that have the broke mindset. That's the difference. You're still hanging out with your friends that are all about this middle class idea of work hard, party hard, or, work-life balance, and, you gotta have everything in perfect check, and, you can't work too hard, and they talk about the 4-day weekend that they just rolled out in Iceland. It's ridiculous, and you're still entertaining these people, but you're trying to 10x. And that was the worst part of it for me, to be real. Worse than living in the warehouse. At least when I lived in the warehouse, I was surrounded by people who were committed. I wasn't connected to all these people that were putting doubt in my mind about that I was working too hard, that I didn't belong there. I was surrounded by people who were had a cult-like belief that they were doing the right thing. And I would rather go wrong on a subject and go all in than be stuck in between two schools of thought and be walking up the middle of the road and get railroaded, get smashed by a truck. I would rather go all in. That's actually how you get sick too, is trying to entertain everybody's ideas. You're trying to entertain and keep people happy and not offend people. And then you're trying to take on this new way of thinking. You're trying to study the 1% and your family and your old friends, and they start taking little jabs at you. And it's funny because in the beginning, they full out, overtly, try and set you back. They try and tell you to take it easy, to slow down, you've changed, it's not that important. And then people who have had losses, people who tried what you're trying but failed, usually older people. Like when I was 20, I talked to so many 45-year-olds and 40-year-olds. They were like, yeah, just wait until you've had some failures, bro. You'll slow down. These guys are talking about themselves. I've had more failures than most people have had attempts at this point. And yeah, the failures slow you down. And if you don't handle the emotion and the lesson that came, the actual pain, if you don't handle the pain that came with that incident, then yeah, you're gonna slow down. But if you can handle the pain, confront it, learn from the situation, then everything is a building block, So that's the hardest part for me was going through that, was the transition of friends and then seeing who in my family, I don't even say family, I say relatives. You know, family is an earned thing. I got people that aren't relatives, but they're family. I'm very distinct on that. Family are people who have your back no matter what, want you to succeed. You can call them 24/7 and they'll be there for you. And they believe in what you're doing. They don't take jabs even though they don't always agree with everything you do. You know, they defend you behind your back. That's family. Relatives are just people that you share genetic code with. You know, that's a relative, you know. And relatives that's less important to me. But on the climb, in the beginning, everybody tries to help you by telling you to chill out when you start doing 10x. And then what ends up happening is then they all shut up. You know, as long as you make your case, you're like, listen, support me or say nothing. That's usually how I handle those situations. Support me or say nothing. And then once you start seeing some success, then you start seeing like the little jabs coming out. From people you thought were your friends, they start taking jabs at you. Little covert jabs, little jokes, little stabs at you. And social media makes you open to that, you know. We're doing that now. I mean, we're cranking out so much content. And yeah, you just start seeing who's on your team. And you start seeing who's resentful. It just shows, like people literally show themselves. And that part is a little difficult. You know, social media exposes you to way more scrutiny, and you know, people aren't voicing their opinions, but they're criticizing yours. I always find that so interesting. You know, Grant was right. You know, first they ignore you, you know, and then they start hating on you, and then eventually they admire and love you. So we'll see if I get to that next stage. It's also the other thing is like I've had people, family too, ask me like, hey, like why do you only share good stuff? Like, why don't you share all the bad stuff? It's like, well, you know, my life's not a reality show, although it kind of is. Just a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how to do it, but I don't see them doing it, you know? And Grant's advice is like, just do it and you'll figure it out. But when you're making content that's like development, education, man, you're taking a risk, you know? You got to figure out like, you know, do I put out my failure first? But then why would anybody want to listen to my failure? But so then you put out your success first, and then they're all like, dude, this guy's bragging. Who the hell is this dude? You know? So then you're like, well, what do I put out? You know, and you're just in this constant, so then it's to Grant's point, just put it out.